Hi, boys and girls. It's Mr. Wasemann again, and today we are getting to the most interesting part of our biography, which is our famous Hoosiers' claim to fame, which basically describes what made them famous. I'm in my Google Slides presentation on the first slide with the title Claim to Fame. Now, you will notice that there are several slides that have that title. The first slide asks three important questions. Where did the famous Hoosier begin his career? When did the famous Hoosier begin his or her career? And how? How did the famous Hoosier begin their career that brought them to fame? So in this section right here, I have those three boxes, which I have answered three questions. Now, before I get into drafting that answer, I want to point out something to you all. In my previous video tutorial, back when I was talking about Steve McQueen's beginnings, I left off with him joining the Marine Corps, where he served for 3 years. After the Marine Corps, he left and decided to pursue acting. And I wrote this part in a separate slide from this description about him being in the Marines, because after being honorably discharged from the Marines, Steve McQueen used funds from the GI Bill to study acting in New York. From 1952 to 1955, McQueen started some Broadway stage plays, including productions of A Member of the Wedding and A Hatful of Rain. He also had small roles on live TV shows. Now, this was the very beginning of his career, and partly when he was studying how to be an actor. So a lot of what he was doing here technically was acting, but it wasn't really a career. There were probably a couple of paid gigs, but it wasn't enough where he could just rely on his acting jobs to pay the bills. So after a couple of years of working in New York, he decided to move to Los Angeles, where they film movies. New York back in the 50s was a big capital for Broadway and for the fledgling TV arena that was being created as the technology was being developed. But he wanted to be a movie star, so he had to go where movies were being filmed, and that was in Hollywood, California. So I need to compose some text that describes that event. So I'm pushing over my bullet point reminders so that I can remind myself what needs to be in this section. So after a few years working in New York, we'll say working and studying in New York, comma, Steve McQueen decided to move back to the Los Angeles area. Let's include that N to pursue acting jobs in movies. Now you'll notice I wrote the word back. He moved back to Los Angeles because I'm referring to a previous event when he moved in with his mother and his second stepfather, his mom's third husband, went in the early 1940s when he lived in LA and then eventually went to boarding school. When he joined the Marines, he probably traveled all over. But then when he was discharged, he chose to go to New York. But now he's back in Los Angeles. So he moved back to LA to pursue acting jobs in movies. So now we want to describe what that looked like. So his first film role was a bit part, which was like a small role. It wasn't a lead role in a movie called Somebody Up There Likes Me. And then there were a couple other movies that he did before people kind of discovered him. So I'm going to write about that. His first role was a bit part in the movie Somebody Up There Likes Me in 1956. Okay, so when I'm listing movies that Steve McQueen stars in, I want to make sure that I list the year that they come out. He followed this with roles in, and this is where I can start listing movies. And here I'm going to do a little copying and pasting to save myself from some typing. So Control C. I'm going to drop these in here. Okay, so this looks like it is highlighted in white, so I just need to go to highlighting and make that transparent so you don't see that. I'm going to take out these bullet points because, again, I am not making a bullet list. I'm making sentences. And now I'm going to change the text to match what I have on my slide. So make it a little bit bigger, take out the boldness and the italics. And now I have to just change the color. Now, just dropping in those names does not make a sentence. So let's read what I've written. Okay, he followed this with roles in Never Loved a Stranger, which was in 1958, The Blob, which was also in 1958, and The Great St. Louis Bank Robbery in 1959. Now, I'm going to go back to this strategy when it comes to writing and revising with the acronym ARMS: add, remove, move, and substitute. So just dropping in those movie titles does not make a complete sentence. So I need to reword things to make the information flow a little better. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for redundant words, and I'm going to move words and sentences that sound better in a different place. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here. So his first role was a bit part in the movie Somebody Up There Likes Me in 1956. He followed this with roles in Never Loved a Stranger and The Blob, both in 1958. Okay, he started two movies in the same year, or was in two movies. I don't know if he didn't star in Never Loved a Stranger. He also was cast in the movie The Great St. Louis Bank Robbery. I'm going to take out that comma and use the word in to kind of join those two ideas together. Okay, so let's reread what I wrote. His first role was a bit part in the movie Somebody Up There Likes Me in 1956. He followed this with roles in Never Love a Stranger and The Blob, both in 1958. He also was cast in the movie The Great St. Louis Bank Robbery in 1959. Okay. He also was cast in the movie. Okay, so that's different than saying starred in or was in. I'm thinking about word choice to break up the monotony of some of my sentences, because as an actor, you are always starring or cast in a movie. So sometimes it's good to switch up the verbs that I use to describe the same type of event to make it more interesting for the reader. Okay. So now that I've got that written down, I can take out the bullet points right here and clean up this space. And then I can put my picture frame square, my placeholder back over here. Okay, so this describes his first steps into becoming a famous movie actor. Again, this was the beginning of his career, so it did not really cause him to become a superstar quite yet. That's the next step, and let me describe that for you. So on my next slide, it says career highlight number 2, okay? So we established what he did to get the ball rolling, to start his career. Now we need to talk about some other events that helped him gain momentum. I'm going to write about that second career highlight. Okay. He was cast in a TV show, a Western called Wanted Dead or Alive, as a bounty hunter, Josh Randall. The TV show ran on CBS for 3 years, from 1958 to 1961, making McQueen a household name. Now, you may or may not go out and see a particular movie, but if you have a television in your home and you turn that television on week after week, you might be able to catch an episode of a TV show, or at least start to see the actors in like film clips or commercials, and you start to recognize that same actor, especially if that actor is in a lead role. So I'm going to take this information, and again, it's structured somewhat like sentences, but I'm going to have to do some rewriting as I go. But I'm going to copy what I've written. I'm going to open up my text box. And since I know that I'm just including my second career highlight, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that bullet point. I'm just going to drop that information. Okay. Again, I'm going to change up the text so it matches all the other slides. In a slideshow, you want all of your text and all of your slides to kind of match one another, okay? So now I need to rewrite or kind of fill in some words and phrases to help make these sentences complete. Steve McQueen, apostrophe S, breakout role. And since this is the start of a sentence, I'm just going to make those lowercase. Steve McQueen's breakout role was when he was cast in the lead in the TV Western Wanted Dead or Alive as bounty hunter Josh Randall. Okay, I'm going to include some articles. The show, or the TV show or television show, the television show ran on CBS for 3 years. I'm going to change that number 3 to the word 3 years, from 1958 to 1961, making McQueen a household name. Okay, so now I have gone a little bit farther into Steve McQueen's story, offering up some specific details about a specific aspect of his career. So in the slide before it, I kind of laid out what started his career, him moving to the Hollywood area and to pursue acting jobs in film. But then he, ironically landed a role on a TV show, which is really what kind of brought a lot of attention his way. And that's how we are going to compose our paragraphs that describe our Famous Hoosiers career highlights. Each of these slides is going to be representing a career highlight in chronological or time order. Okay. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, we will talk again soon. Thanks, and good luck writing.